Welcome back to Education Matters. Did you correctly answer true? According to the Pew Research Center, teens tend to use similar platforms regardless of their demographic characteristics, except when it comes to Facebook. 7 in 10 teens living in households earning less than $30,000 a year say they use Facebook, compared with only 36% of those whose annual family income is $75,000 or more. Did you know that North Carolina has a poet laureate? All right, I already learned something from Jackie a minute ago. I was mispronouncing a poet laureate. The first one was appointed in 1948, and our most recent one, Jaki Shelton Green, is joining us here today. So congratulations on this high honor bestowed upon you by the governor of North Carolina.
Thank you. I'm honored.
Well, you know, and now when I looked up to see what about the history of poet laureates, and I did notice that you know, it used to be a lifetime appointment. So. You didn't get that, but you still got the, I think Governor Hunt changed it to a 2-year appointment. So tell us, I guess, first of all, what is the role of a state poet laureate?
The role of the poet laureate basically is to be an ambassador for literature and literacy across the state. So in my role, I will travel across the state, interacting with libraries and public school systems and universities and many community centers and community-based organizations, encouraging and expanding literature and the literary arts.
And now you were, in the announcement, I mean, you were already one of the state's sort of most acclaimed poets. I mean, you've been writing and celebrated. You're in the North Carolina Literary Hall of Fame. You got the North Carolina Award for Literature. How did you grew up? We were just talking, but we're both native North Carolinians. Yes. You're from Eflin, Orange County?
Yes, I grew up in rural Northern Orange County, and I was welcomed into a wonderful family of educators. So literacy and literature were always available to me as a child. And as a child who was pretty precocious and really obsessed with nature and being alone, poetry was the vehicle for me. Poetry was my world, and I saw poetry, heard poetry, felt poetry in everything in my environment.
And so yeah, it sounds like that you said you were born into a family of educators. So obviously your parents, grandparents, that was a big part of it. I assume you must have had some teachers who encouraged you along the way too.
Yes, I also grew up during segregation. So reading, writing, literacy was very, very valued. There was never a question of, will you go to college? The question was always, where will you go to college? So given that, my grandmother's grandmother, the story of her life really encouraged me and is a framework that I stand on in terms of being able to be in a position to tell the stories and help people to understand that our poetry really is deeply embedded in story, and to help North Carolinians dig out, excavate their own stories is what matters to me.
Well, speaking of that own story, you are also the first African-American poet laureate. How important, well, I guess first of all, how important is that to you, but also just how in terms of the Black experience in America, in North Carolina, is literature and writing and literacy? I mean, I think about our history, tragic history of slavery and things. The idea of that was one of the things that you always think about is it was a crime to teach a slave to write and read, right? So
exactly.
So it's powerful.
It's very powerful, and I know that I stand broadly on the shoulders of those ancestors who made many sacrifices. But more importantly, I would like to think that I'm a reflection, that when young children, not only children of color, but that when all children look at me, I like to demystify this mystique that the artist, the writer, the dancer, the poet is something that they can't attain. So I encourage young children when I'm working with them to call themselves writers. It's very important. And yes, it's important as a woman of color, as an African-American woman in the South, the third woman appointed North Carolina Poet Laureate, to be able to have these platforms, these social platforms, where especially young Black children see me and understand that I am them in this role.
I really like what you just said about calling yourself a writer, because I think a lot of, you're right, that things like the arts, dance, music, people think, well, you have a gift. I mean, we all have gifts, right? But I think what your point would be is that all children can become accomplished writers.
That's right.
Can be poets, because we have it within us.
Yes, naming is powerful, and I don't want them to think that this is only a gift. It's about being headstrong to stick to what you know, to identify with what you know in your stories, and to tell those stories, the power of utterance, and to give permissions to so many disenfranchised writers across the state, and so many writers who have thousands of poems waiting to just burst forth. And I feel like that's my role, is to help them bring these new stories, these new voices to the platform. I'm 65 years old, and I'm not going to live forever. And I would like to think that there are young people like me who want to write. And
so you're going to get a chance. This will be a cool platform for you to go. So you're going to go visit some schools. Some teachers may bring you in. You'll be able to talk to students. I mean, how does that work? How's that going to go?
Well, right now I'm scheduled to be, oh my God. So in addition to teaching documentary poetry.
That's right. I should have been. Yeah, you also you teach over at Duke University too. In addition, the poet laureate is not your full-time paying gig.
No, it's not. But in addition to doing that, I will be working with public school systems and private school systems. They're on my calendar. Libraries. There'll be many conferences where I'll be conducting workshops, facilitating workshops. And in doing so, I also work with public school teachers. And one of the things I want to give a pitch for is Poetry Out Loud, which is a wonderful platform, a national platform for advancing the study of the craft of poetry and recitation.
Poetry Out Loud.
Poetry Out Loud.
Okay, we'll share that on our website so people can find it. So last, I guess just as in conclusion, what would be the things that influence you, advice you would give to parents and teachers about this?
To remember that poetry really does nurture emotional resiliency, and it promotes community. And what's been very powerful for me is to witness how children build community through the making of poetry, through the making of poetics, and how their stories matter, and how they find out when they tell themselves stories and they tell each other stories that they do cross boundaries. And as far as I'm concerned, that's what the arts really should be, that incredible bridge that bridges humanity, my humanity to your humanity. So we celebrate our humanness, and we celebrate all the stories that make us who we are as a unified North Carolina citizenry.
Thank you so much for joining us. Our viewers, look her up, Jaki Shelton Green. You are a North Carolina treasure. You already were, and we're honored to have you on the show today.
Thanks so
much. After the break, this week's Leadership Spotlight.